Okay, a couple more right here. You've been very patient.
Yes, I was just wondering when exactly do you expect to have the right to work law come up?
We don't exactly have a plan on it at the moment. It's probably the largest issue out there.
Yes.
That honestly we have Republicans that are for it, Republicans that are against it.
Do you support it?
May I speak out for a moment? The governor's expressed the fact that he doesn't want to deal with the issue this year. That it's a distraction to some of the other critical issues. Yeah, some of the other critical stated. The Senate has reluctance to deal with it at this point. That's been stated publicly as well. Yes, I do support it. I voted for it in the past when it's been on the floor of the House. But I also am placed in charge of being sure that we get through this legislative session in the key areas that I mentioned to you, including a budget and maps and government next decade. And this is probably the one issue, although some of the education reform is equally as volatile, probably the one issue that has the ability to completely off track the General Assembly from its work. So that's what we're considering right now. And I'll just be real truthful with you. We don't know yet. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I know it seems like a no-brainer until you have 20,000 union carpenters and pipe fitters in the General Assembly, as we did in 1996, and personal bodyguard that day. It's not without its concerns. So, yeah. Okay, ma'am, right there. Out straight, right here.
You started out with the meeting discussing the budget and how that we were in a crisis, and I think that's what I keep coming back to when I'm thinking about the charter schools. I'm not concerned with the competition. I've not seen anything that looks good with the charter schools. Every year I get students who leave the charter school, and they usually leave the school right after the funding deadline, and they come without the funding then. You mentioned,
I hear this a lot. Is it hundreds, thousands of students?
I'd say hundreds.
Hundreds.
In
a large percentage of those.
A lot of them, and they come with skills that are pitiful. I don't know what's going on in this charter schools, but trust me, I am not concerned about the competition. But what I am concerned about, is your budget. And you said from the beginning that we are in a crisis. So if we have limited funds, this is what I'm concerned about. How can we do our job if you give this money to this group and this group and this group? We only have so much money. Where are you going to get the money that you're passing out?
Every one of those students is a public school student that's going to be funded someplace. In your school or at a charter school. Same funding, actually probably less than the charter school, depending on what you receive.
So the funding that was cut last year, we're going to get that reinstated?
I didn't say that. I said the funding that follows that student is either going to be at your school or it's going to be at the charter school. Both public schools, same funding. It's not like a new student that's being created out of whole cloth someplace that, they're imported from Ohio or something like that. It's a student that's either in the traditional public school being funded at the level of the ADM for that school, or at a charter school at the statewide average. So,
but how is the school system going to maintain the level of work that they've been doing if their money is taken away from them?
Okay, now that's a different question. The charter schools do not take money away from the school. Now, it's a student goes, money follows.
If we've got extra money, I'm okay with it. That's good.
Yeah. Now, the money follows the student. The student's not there. Okay? And if it's one student, I know that it doesn't make a difference when it was 22,000 students, then it makes sense that they're funded in a public charter school at that level. Now, education funding generally, this is going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult for all of us. It's our goal to flatline, in best case, to flatline education funding from not from what was appropriated, but from what was actually distributed to schools in the last 2 years, after the governor's $300 million cut overall. So it's going to be a difficult challenge for us. Doesn't mean every school corporation is going to receive the same amount, because like the new school funding formula, somebody said a little earlier they didn't graduate from algebra with high grades, so they didn't understand that. Let me tell you, they joined a great company. There's only 4 or 5 people in the state that understand the school funding formula. We do not let them travel together. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's a very complex formula, and so it doesn't guarantee that every school corporation is going to get what they got in the past. There's a complexity formula with it. The more complex, in quotes, the student, the more funding. There's a foundation amount that every student gets. So it is complicated, but our goal is to have education funding the same as it was in the last 2 years, and that's unlike some states that have cut 17 to 20%. The gentleman right back here has been very patient. Please identify who you are again.
My name is Ron Crosby. I'm a teacher at Leo High School.
Great.
Number one, I'm very honored to be a teacher. I think it's using your word, a profession I should be proud of, and I think I deserve respect.
Thank you. I agree 100%.
Also, to come to this meeting, I have a slew of work to do.
Me too.
That I had to step away from to come here, so that's why, once again, I thank you for coming. Let me address a couple things. First, in terms of money that goes from a public school to a charter school, it is created. We happen to have a school corporation that we have one school that has, as far as I'm concerned, they had a great administrator, they had great teachers, and that by the state of Indiana, because of certain rules that they had, it was considered a family school. In fact, they made improvements. The state visited the school. They immediately set up a set of criteria that basically fired the principal, which, by the way, now he's at one of the more successful schools in the state of Indiana. And you watch, he will be considered a great principal. It makes no sense. What it feels like is, I've actually taught for 35 years. I don't want to label myself being an old player. What do you teach? I teach mathematics. What love what I do? What level?
Great teacher.
I'm sure. What level do you teach?
Right now I'm teaching senior math classes, pre-calc, AP calc, statistics, things like that. I would like to see the numbers. Harding, we're talking about turning that particular school into a charter school. As I understood it, and I want to see the numbers, I'm a numbers guy too, I want to see exactly what's going to happen to the rest of the corporation if that's set up. What we originally were informed is we were going to lose a great deal of money from the different funds, so to fund that school adequately for a private organization, I'm glad to hear it's not for-profit, but for a private organization to run it, it was going to rob from the rest of us. We were going to have serious issues. So rather than talking generalities, I want to see the numbers in terms of what's going to happen to our corporation if they set up that school.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to look into it, because I've heard a lot of discussion. I don't know if that's where most of this pushback is coming, the specifics that are happening there. And I'm interested in seeing this myself. But state funding, I'm giving a number. It's state average is what they receive, state funding that they receive at a public charter school for that student. Now, what happens intra-corporation, can't tell you that. I don't know what the specific plan was here. The state funding is the statewide average, which is probably less than what your per student funding is at the other school.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, sir.
The other thing that point I want to make is over the years, we have been required to do many, many, many different things. The rules get thrown at us, and what happens is it makes it more and more difficult to focus on what I always thought our goal was. One of the worst things to happen to schools, in my opinion, and I think others may back me up here, was the ISTEPS test. In essence, what happened is our focus changed. If we didn't do well on the test, it really wasn't getting kids ready for college. It really wasn't doing some of the jobs that we were supposed to be doing. We were considered a failing school. And therefore, I could go on and on and on. Interestingly, I'm also very involved with foreign exchange students. What's the difference between all these schools that are considered great, these countries rather, that are considered to have a great education, and ours is number one? We're being compared to the best of the best in other countries. In other countries also, and I ask every one of the exchanges that they have, if you don't do well in school, who do you blame? The answer is, well, it's me. I'm obviously not doing the job. Not so in the U.S., not anymore. We have jokes about that. But the reality is, if kids don't learn, they turn and blame somebody else. And so I think ultimately, I think the parents do need to take responsibility, but ultimately it's the kids' job to learn, and we have to stop giving them excuses. We have to overcome many of the things I want to say. I would love to talk again, but thank you for your time. And thank you for coming and listening.
Thanks. Thank you. The gentleman right in front of you right there. So the building.
First of all, thank you for being here. I'm Chris Hensel, Superintendent of Northwest Allen County Schools.
Thank you.
And I'm going to take you in a little bit different direction.
All right.
Than what we've been talking about this evening.
I'd say that's a relief, but I suspect it.
I'm also not going to put you on the spot to give an answer here this evening, but I want to make you aware of something.
Right.
I know sometimes we do things with the best of intentions, but sometimes there's unintended consequences. And one
It's especially true of the legislative process.
And one of those happens to be property tax caps.
Okay.
From 1995, I believe, until 2008, there was a process for building projects. In Northwest Allen County Schools, our population happened to explode during that particular time. And we were growing by a rate of about a half of elementary school per year for a period of time. So therefore, we have built 2 middle schools, 4 or 5 elementaries, renovated some schools, and expanded our high school under all the laws that existed before 2008. In fact, the last building, I believe, was approved in the 2006-07 school year. None of those...
And the change now, for those of you who don't know, is it goes to a referendum to the taxpayers if it exceeds certain monetary limits, $10 million.
Of all those buildings, only one had enough opposition from the community to initiate the remonstrance process. The one that initiated the process was overwhelmingly supported by the community. In fact, over 70% approved the project. The 30% who did not actually wanted to spend more money by a significant amount to build a second high school. There was virtually no opposition for the projects to begin with. Our community, which overwhelmingly supported these, understood that there was a responsibility amongst all of our taxpayers to pay off this debt and those bond issues that went along with it. Because of property tax caps, which are now finally starting to see the full implementation and ramification of that law, we are short $1.1 million for being able to make our debt service project. That $1 million deficit in the debt service payment we are still required legally to pay. Obviously, it's just like a mortgage. And next year, the DLGF has informed us that we will take that $1.1 million and spread it along all the property taxpayers so that each of our taxpayers who are not at the cap will have their taxes go up artificially and unnecessarily because they are making up for the difference on that required payment that was not paid by those who were at the cap. We're a unique school corporation in that it's rural, it's suburban, and it's urban. And we have a portion that's in Fort Wayne City with multiple layers of taxes. That's predominantly where the people are getting the property tax cap. So we're going to take the money that we lost to the caps and spread it out over our farmers and our other community members who don't live in Fort Wayne City. And I think we did a projection in about 8 to 10 years, eventually those farmers and other people outside of Fort Wayne City will be paying the same property taxes that those inside Fort Wayne City without getting any of the city services because of this unintended consequence.
Okay, would you, Superintendent, thank you for that. This young lady up here in the front, purple, hand up, is my Chief of Staff, Julie Halpern. Would you please be sure we exchange information and we'll look at this specific.
We certainly will, because we just want to make sure it's fair to all of our taxpayers.
Yeah, doesn't sound like it. Okay, okay, Kathy, we'll chat with DLGF and our fiscal guys to see if we can, if this is your only solution. So, yeah, the law of unintended consequences probably sees no greater exercise than in legislative bodies. We have a problem. It may be a problem of, and I said this at a meeting upstairs, it may be a problem that's happened once. Legislators want to fix things. Our remedy is to have a law. Now, the property tax cap is a little bit more complicated than this.